Welcome to the 96th episode of Talk the Book program, Talk the Book the Review. This program was initiated about 1.5 years back by our chairman, AP State Council of Higher Education, to introduce some good books to the students of this present generation. The student community, what he follows, not having many reading habits, especially, they are very much happy with the tech usage rather than going with the reading of books and analyzing the books, understanding the books. So the literature itself gives some glimpses of the past as well as the present. So that was the missing link he found with the present generation and started this program of introducing books, whether it is Telugu as well as English, alternating with every week on Friday between 3 to 4 p.m. by experts on the concerned subject. So today, for this 96th episode of this program, to talk the book, with us Professor Nikhila from EFL, English and Foreign Language University of Hyderabad. She is going to review the book on Madras Studios, which was a narrative, genre and ideology in Tamil cinema written by Swarnavel Ishwaran Pillai. So, regarding the reviewer of this today, Professor Nikhila, who was the professor in head department of film studies, the English and Foreign Language University, Hyderabad, who teaches and researches in the areas of film studies and gender studies. He has been teaching for nearly 30 years, first at Mount Carmel College, Bangalore, then at Pondicherry Central University, and now in EFL, Hyderabad for the last 30 years. She got her doctorate for her dissertation on gender and partition. She has organized seminars, film festivals, and workshops, and presently coordinates an online film discussion group called Talking Film Online. She supervises research in film studies, and 9 students have been awarded their PhD under her supervision, especially in this particular specialized topic. Her recent publications are in filmic remakes and multimodal translations between different Indian languages. Her current research projects include a commissioned essay for a volume of Shyam Benegal and for a collaborative volume on New Cinemas of India, where she is researching on new age Kannada films. Especially in introducing this reviewer of the today program, a totally different line away from the regular teaching community. So I request Professor Nikhila to review the book for our students. Thank you very much. I leave it to you.
Thank you very much, sir, for introducing me and also for having me on this program. It's a very unique program, this book review program, and I understand that you have been carrying on this program for many, many months now. So hearty congratulations to AP Higher Education Council for organizing such a meaningful program which will be beneficial for students and teachers. When I asked the organizers what would be interesting, I was told that one could introduce any book that will be useful for students. And I was thinking, since I come from the background of film studies, there are many questions that people have about cinema. Although we watch films regularly, this whole idea of studying cinema and studying cinema systematically is something that people are not aware of. So it is in that spirit that I thought I will introduce a book related to cinema, an academic study related to cinema, and that's what I will be doing today. I will start by sharing the screen. Is it visible? Can you just let me know if my screen is visible?
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. Okay.
Okay. Thank you. So I will be introducing this book called Madras Studios, which is by Swarnavel Ishwaran Pillai. But before I go to the book itself, I want to speak a little bit about why the need to bring films within the ambit of academic study. All of us, I'm sure, watch films and also enjoy watching films. We see films as a part of our quota of entertainment. Is it necessary to study films? That's the question. Given that cinema in India is so widespread and pervasive, virtually reaching every nook and corner of this country, we know, from many anecdotes that people share constantly about how a particular film impacted them, how important cinema is in their life. Also, given the variety of films that are there in India, the different language films from different regions of the country, different genres of films, given that there's such a wide variety, and of course, the sheer number of films that get made in India. According to some readily available estimates, from the beginning of cinema in India to the present, apparently more than 85,000 films have been made in different Indian languages. About 16 to 20 filmmaking languages are there in India, languages in which films get made. For instance, if you look at the statistics of films made in even the last couple of years, that is post-pandemic, you will see how apparently there were more than 800 films that released in 2021. And remember, we were just coming out of the pandemic at that point in time. And in 2022, it seems just the 4 South Indian language films put together, that is Kannada, Tamil, Telugu, and Malayalam, accounted for nearly 875 films in 2022. So given the pervasiveness, variety, and volume of cinema in India, it seems strange that the study of cinema has not caught on in the way that it should. What we have at present are mostly in the form of factual details or information or chronologies or language-specific histories. So you have the history of Telugu cinema, the history of Kannada cinema, Malayalam cinema, largely journalistic accounts, which may give us factual details about the films. But there has been no attempt to theorize or to make a larger sense of these facts or these chronologies. When we look at the proportion or the volume of cinema, we realize that the study of cinema is completely disproportionate to the volume and variety that exists. It looks like in the, at least in the Indian context, we have not thought of using cinema, let's say, for in the process of developing our sociological theories. So we have not thought of using films as source material, for developing sociological theories or psychological theories, theories of visuality, theories of gender, region, and language, or even theories of film and spectatorship. To a large extent, we rely on theories developed in the context of Hollywood cinema or European cinema. So while our cinema is going global, while our cinema is not just becoming pan-Indian, but virtually conquering different parts of the world today, unfortunately, the study of cinema to a large extent relies on theories, many of which have come from the Western context. It is in that scenario that we feel that there must be more studies of cinema, particularly Indian cinema. To some extent, especially after the 1990s, with Bollywood becoming quite a big commodity that got exported to very many places outside of India, we see some amount of research, particularly on Bollywood cinema, happening in many Western universities, in anthropology departments or English departments or media and communication departments. Unfortunately, the volume of research on other Indian language films, be it Telugu or Tamil or Kannada, it has not been as visible has not been as visible as the Hindi language films. So one of the questions that I get asked then when I tell people that it will be interesting to study films, people ask me, so what should we study? When you say film studies, what should we study? And I say, of course, there are the films themselves. Maybe if you look at the silent era, a very small, a minuscule proportion of the films that got made in India actually survived. But if we look at films probably after the 1940s onwards, there is a larger volume of films that are available. Many more films are available in different Indian languages. So you have the films themselves that you can probably research on. If not the films, or in addition to the films, you have a large variety of material in print. These include magazines, newspapers that report on various films and filmic events that document many events that were happening in the film industry. So there is print material. There are also songbooks that used to come that are available, that are still available in archives and private collectors. There is also the posters and the visual material related to cinema that is available. So when you're studying cinema, you can study films. You can also make use of print and other kinds of material on cinema that is available. You can also study personnel and their contribution, to cinema, the people associated with cinema. There are studies of film stars in the Telugu context itself. There is a very well-known study, for instance, on stars such as NTR and Chiranjeevi. So you can have studies of personnel like film stars, or you can even have studies on the so-called not so visible elements in cinema, or the personnel of cinema, such as junior artists, stuntmen, costumers, cinematographers, sound designers, etc., who have contributed to cinema. You can also study archival records. Again, this is something that not many people know, that archives are a good source of study for students who want to research on cinema. And you can look at reports of government-appointed committees that serve to shape policies for development and censorship of cinema. You can also look at various sources, that have given scope for making films, that have supplied narratives for making films, literary text to dramatic performances, oral and folk narratives, and also painting and sculpture, and how they have given rise to films. It is in this context that I thought it would be interesting for us to look at a very, very important work that has come on South Indian cinema. As I said earlier, Bollywood is fairly more researched, well researched compared to other Indian languages. It is in that context that I think Swarnavel Ishwaran's book called Madras Studios provides an important corrective to this imbalance in the study of different Indian language films. So when people ask me how to study cinema, I wish to introduce them to this book called Madras Studios. The subtitle is Narrative, Genre and Ideology in Tamil Cinema, as a kind of a model for what a good study in film studies can look like. This book was published in 2015 and it was published by Sage Publications. The book is a wonderful effort by Professor Swarnavel Ishwaran, who teaches in the Department of English and the School of Journalism at Michigan State University. He graduated from the Film and Television Institute of India. Many of you may know the FTII, and also the University of Iowa, where he got his PhD degree. He has made films. So in addition to being an academic, he's also a filmmaker. He's made films, documentary films, such as Nagapattinam, Waves from the Deep. He's also recently made a feature film called Kattumaram, which is Catamaran, that he's made in collaboration with a leading Tamil director called Miss King. So if we have to look at this book a little more closely, the book is an award-winning book. It has secured an award from Tamil Ilakkiya Thittam, instituted by University of Toronto with a well-known Tamil literary organization. So you can see that it is well feted, well appreciated. In fact, many people who have reviewed the book, who have said excellent things about how this is such a path-breaking book. The book is about 332 pages, and it is composed of 6 chapters. After the introductory chapter, the 3 chapters that follow trace the major film studios in Madras Presidency. In fact, in the introductory chapter, Ishwaran goes on to talk about the other works related to cinema, particularly related to Tamil cinema, and the method that he adopted in collecting data and the process of putting together this book, and also delineates in brief the chapters of the book. Then follows 3 chapters which trace the major film studios in Madras Presidency. Although there are many different accounts of the number of studios that were actually making films in Madras, he chooses these studios partly because they made an indelible mark on the kind of filmmaking process itself that happened in the Tamil film industry and the South Indian film industry in general. Also, they continued making films for 4 decades or more. So in terms of their longevity, these were some of the most important film studios. He also gives us a very vivid picture of some of the people who are the moving forces behind these studios. For instance, in the chapter after the introduction, he talks about modern theaters and T.R. Sundaram in Salem, who comes basically from a textile family, textile industry family, but goes on, to do something very different from his family occupation, which is make films, set up a studio. His own, kind of experience and his own exposure in England. Also, his wife, who was a foreigner, with her encouragement, he's able to set up and do something really path-breaking. So he sets up modern theaters in Salem, and Ishwaran gives a very vivid picture of the kind of films that were made over here. He also, in the chapter that follows, he gives us an overview of the AVM studios, which moves to Karaikudi, but you know, there are the AVM studios are all over, including in Bangalore, and Gemini Studios Madras, which was started by S.S. Vasan. He sets up a very neat kind of dialogue between two iconic films, made by AVM and Gemini Studios in this chapter. In the next chapter, he talks about the Vijay Vahini studios and the key figures, B. Nagireddy and Chakrapani, and also Prasad studios, but mostly L.V. Prasad, the man himself. Who is, which this chapter traces his early directorial venture for Vijay Vahini. The last two chapters of this book. So far, you got a sense of, I was just giving an overview of the first three chapters, which are mostly, which appear mostly as if they are giving you the history of cinema, historical details of cinema. But the book is incomplete if we don't look at the contribution of the last two chapters, where he engages with this question. So what does this history mean to the present? So is it something that just happened in the past? We don't have to, it has no connection with the present. We don't have to look at the contemporary. No, he's looking at what was the impact of this history. What does it mean to films that get made in the present? What are the continuities and the changes from the past? In the penultimate chapter, in fact, he looks at a very interesting phenomenon that we have seen in a number of Indian language films, double and multiple roles. That is the same star actor. More often than not, it is the star actor essaying double roles or multiple roles. He looks at how this phenomenon may have traveled, from South Indian films to the north, that is to Hindi cinema, and back to the South Indian cinemas through the phenomenon of remakes. So he's tracing the trajectory of, how it became a common practice for double and multiple roles in different language films. He cites the examples of several such films in Tamil and also in Hindi. He also looks at the changes in technology, how earlier, for creating doubles, you had to do it while shooting. The camera was the means for, creating this trick of the double. But later on, with the advancement of technology, it could be created during post-production. He also looks at the relationship, the somewhat troubled relationship between Tamil, the region, so to speak, and India, the nation, and how Dravidian nationalism of earlier times gets played out, particularly in films like Roja, Maniratnam. He looks at Maniratnam's oeuvre, particularly his film Roja. He also looks at the current trend of mythological films. We know of how mythological films, folklore films, were a kind of founding genre of Indian, cinema earlier. But he looks at the present genre of mythological films as well. Various actresses like Vijay Shanti or Anushka, essaying roles of goddesses in Amoru or Aman films, and Arundhati, and so on. He also introduces us to people whom the younger generation may never have heard of, stars whom the younger generation may not even know very much. While thanks to films like Mahanati, we may hear the younger generation may be acquainted with Savitri. Actresses, stars of their times like G. Varalakshmi, Madhuri Devi, Swarnavel's book gives a very vivid account, particularly of Madhuri Devi. He discusses how she was the star of many progressive films, Tamil films of the period, and how contemporary female stars, female stars of today, really compare poorly both in the on-screen choice of roles and in terms of the way in which they led their off-screen lives. He looks at the various gender bender kind of roles that she was doing, and the way in which she chose films, and she acted in roles, including had no hesitation in donning male roles as well. In the last chapter, which is again very interesting and important, he asks why certain genres and themes, particularly, what he calls as the dystopian films, have come in Tamil cinema. Yeah, is the live streaming back? Is the live streaming back? Can someone just let me know?
It's okay, continue.
Oh, okay, fine. Because I thought I had the live streaming had stopped. Okay, I'll share my screen again. Yeah, is it visible?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay. Yeah, so he in the last chapter, he asks why certain genres and themes, particularly the dystopian films, have come. He looks at various ways in which contemporary cinema is disavowing what was envisioned by cinemas of the past. And he looks at how the Tamil genocide in Sri Lanka has impacted the Tamil psyche. So he's looking at the Tamil genocide as a kind of explanation to tell us why certain genres which were never there before, the horror films, the dystopian films, have come in the present context. Having looked at the last three chapters, I now want to come to the first three chapters of the book. These three chapters look at the period between 1940 and 1957. Roughly, it's we can say that it looks at a two-decade period, 1937 to 1957. And he's looking at how filmmaking practices developed in film studios in Madras during this period. And outside of Hollywood, he says this was probably the biggest such privately owned enterprise. He also seems to suggest that this was somewhat different from the Bombay studios, which he says were largely director-centric, like Raj Kapoor's RK Studios or V. Shantaram's Prabhat, and later Raj Kamal's studios, or Himanshu Rai's Bombay Talkies. So after Bombay, Calcutta, as they were called earlier, Pune, Kolhapur, and Lahore, these were the earliest filmmaking, centers. So in the early days of cinema filmmaking was largely almost like a cottage industry. So it was just not systematized. But when it started getting systematized, the important centers of filmmaking were largely Bombay, Calcutta, Pune, Kolhapur, and Lahore. And if you wanted to make a Tamil film, you had to go to Calcutta or Bombay or any of these centers to make a film. So it is in this context that Madras develops around in the 1930s, late 1930s, as a hub of filmmaking activity. Madras emerges as a major filmmaking center, particularly after the introduction of sound technology. This is also important for us to note, because Madras is the center of filmmaking during this period, where it makes films in several languages. So now the way in which we think of linguistic states, the language in which the films speak, and the particular audience for the film, this kind of boundary did not exist earlier. Madras was the center of filmmaking, and films were getting made in Malayalam, in Kannada, in Telugu, and Tamil, because there were studio facilities available, and all kinds of support available for making films in different languages at this point in time. So Madras thus becomes a center for filmmaking, not only for these South Indian languages, but also often for Hindi. Many times the Hindi films were remakes of the successful Tamil or Telugu films, or they would be made simultaneously along with the Tamil or the Telugu versions. I don't want to go into too many details that each of these chapters deal with, because that's something that I would hope readers who are enthused by my introduction to the book will actually go and explore on their own. Instead, I want to look at the kind of questions that this book takes up, and the kind of questions that this book addresses. For instance, it addresses the question, how did cinema develop in relation to technical or technological advancement? So this history of technological advancement or techno-materialism is a very important kind of a history. So it's not just about which was the first Tamil film, or which was the first Telugu film, or which was the first film in color, or which was the first film in CinemaScope. So this book is not just about firsts or giving us simply landmarks. It is telling us about the kind of changes in technical or technological aspects. It could be the use of a particular kind of camera, the sound equipment, a particular kind of lighting that was experimented by innovative cinematographers. It's looking at what kind of cinema resulted or happened as a result of these kinds of technical or technological advancements. It looks at the kind of economic or political or social factors that influenced the changes in film genre, particularly the last chapter, as I mentioned. Why does a particular kind of genre, the dystopian film or the horror film, come in the Tamil context? So he's looking at these questions very closely. He's also looking at various practices of filmmaking that arose in a particular context, in this instance in Madras. So although you had Bombay and you had Calcutta, there were very specific practices of filmmaking emerging in each of these centers. What was unique and specific to Madras is something that you will learn if you read Madras Studios. He looks at how various styles of filmmaking emerged. This could be because of the kind of films, that particular production houses encouraged, the kind of directors whom they employed, and the kind of themes that they borrowed from. So it's a combination of a variety of factors which which kind of influenced the filmmaking style of different studios. And as he traces the different studios, he's also talking about the various styles that became dominant in these studios. Another very interesting part of the book is the way in which he looks at particular films and their sources. These could be the literary sources. So he looks at the particular novel, let's say by Alexander Dumas, that might have influenced the making of a particular film. He's looking at drama, or he's looking at the various folk art, folklore and folk narratives that may have been brought into cinema. So a study called Madras Studios is not just about the film. It's also, kind of a study that draws in his understanding of, not only Western films, but also, various aspects of South Indian Tamil folklore, but broadly South Indian folklore as well. He looks at how, cinema, the Tamil cinema became a kind of unique concoction, borrowing from Western novels, Hollywood cinema, and, adaptations of Hollywood based on literary texts, Indian folk forms and folk narratives, as I said. He's also asking a very interesting question, which is how do we understand and comprehend a film text, particularly one which is estranged from us, one which is distant from us, which was made 50 or 60 years ago, even more. So how do we understand that literary text? It's not particularly transparent. We don't know, it's not obvious. So how do we read a film text? By restoring it to its own times. He's also in the book addressing the question, how was our own, as audience, with our own contemporary likes, dislikes, our sensibility, our cognitive ability to read, make sense of films, how has this developed over time, given our own familiarity with different kinds of films? Another very important question that the book addresses is how have particular kinds of film woods, we are familiar with Bollywood, but with Hollywood, but there are a number of other film woods, such as Tollywood, Bollywood, Sandalwood, a number of different film woods. So he's asking the question, how did these different film woods develop? And of course, he's asking this question particularly in the context of Tamil cinema or Kollywood, a term that he doesn't really use, but a kind of history of a particular regional cinema that he is tracing. He's also a very important kind of an endeavor in the book is, documenting the contribution of people behind the scenes. So he looks at a number, a number of personnel, whether it's cinematographers or others, and he looks at what their contribution is for the spectacle that we see on the screen. Yeah, just a moment. The chapters also look at how cinema in India developed in collaboration and competition among different language films. As we know, in most countries around the world, there is one language of filmmaking for the entire nation, for the entire country. India is unique in the sense that, as I said in the beginning, there are, between 60 to 20 languages in which films get made in India. And not only, are these, incidentally, I mean, it's not like they just get made now and then, or they're just incidental. In fact, we know that the Hindi film industry is pretty big, but in terms of the volume, in terms of the reach, the spread, film industries like the Telugu and the Tamil film industry are almost as big, right? So what is it that, gave rise to these multiple film industries, these multiple places in which films start getting made, securing, an audience for particular language films? How does all this happen? So Swarnavel Ishwaran's book kind of gives us an insider's view, a beginner's view as to how it all happens in Madras, how different language films get made, in collaboration and also in competition with each other. In the last segment of my talk today on this book, I want to focus specifically on one of the chapters in the book. This is chapter 4, where he looks at the Vijayawahini studios and also Prasad, but more importantly, Prasad as a director for Vijayawahini studios. When I thought of introducing this book, Madras Studios, one of the reasons I had at the back of my mind for talking about this book in this forum was this particular chapter, chapter 4. Because we all know histories of Telugu cinema, and we all know, how Hyderabad is such an important, integral part of the Telugu film industry. What many of us may not be familiar with, particularly the younger generation may not know of its beginnings in Madras, the very interesting, kind of work that was done by early filmmakers, particularly those who migrated from, coastal Andhra and made films in Madras. Chapter 4 is an important chapter in this book because it documents some very, a couple of very interesting people and the kind of films that they made. Since so much of the history of cinema in India is language-based history, it's often factual, taken as factual, and it's mostly journalistic, or it's personality-centric. It marks first. We don't know the implications of momentous events or general practices of the times. It is to fill this kind of a vacuum that Madras Studios is very useful. For someone interested in Telugu cinema, this chapter is a must read for the complex argument that it makes about how Telugu identity got shaped via cinema that was made in Madras at a time when demand for a distinct Telugu-speaking region arose. Remember, we're talking of the time period between the 1940s and 1957. So I'm really taking you back in time. A lot of water has, as they say, flowed under the bridge since then, but it's still useful to go back in time to see, what was happening way back in the 1950s. As Ishwaran says in this chapter, the Telugus, that is the Telugu-speaking population in Madras, who had contributed to the economic development of Madras city in particular from the time of British rule, and who were entrenched both industrially and politically at the time of India's independence in Madras, staked their claim for a separate and autonomous Andhra province with the Telugu slogan Madras Manade, Madras is ours. Thus, in the early 1950s, Madras city became a seat of contention as both the Tamils and Telugus wanted it to be a central part of the linguistic state that they were claiming. So in this chapter, he is looking at this as the backdrop, and then talks about two very, very interesting films, Patala Bhairavi and Misama, and why their narratives took the course that they did. The chapter, as I said, focuses on two Telugu and Tamil bilingual films. So Vijay Vahini was making bilingual films. He also gives us a very interesting explanation as to why these films look like they have first been made in Telugu and then later made in Tamil, and then went into Telugu. So he looks at Patala Bhairavi, that was directed by K.V. Reddy in 1951, and Missama or Missiyama in Tamil, that was directed by L.V. Prasad in 1955 and produced by Vijay Vahini Studios. As Ishwaran says, thus the films made between the period 1950 and 55, chosen in this chapter for detailed analysis, were by filmmakers who had Telugu as their mother tongue, but who later became movie moguls in Madras and thus become significant for exploring the way they reflect the complex background of their makers as they navigated through a tumultuous time in Madras marked by disparate linguistic claims and conflicts. So you can see how he's reading these two films in the backdrop of something larger that was happening at that point in time in the political sphere. The chapter looks at the careers mainly of these three very important people. The first two particularly associated with Vijay Vahini Studios, B. Nagi Reddy and Chakrapani. In fact, he gives us a fascinating introduction to Nagi Reddy, both in terms of his association with cinema, but also as someone associated with someone who started Andhra Jyoti and Chanda Mama, Ambuli Mama, and all the various language children's books. So he traces the close connection that was there between the print and the film medium in this chapter. He looks at their move from their place of birth in the Andhra region to Madras. And in the case of L.V. Prasad, it's not a simple direct move. He goes to Madras, he goes to Bombay, waits for a long time, does some work on the fringes of cinema, comes to Madras, then goes back to Pune. So there's a lot of going back and forth that Ishwaran traces. The particular chapter that we are discussing argues that the plot of Patala Bhairavi is set in distant Ujjaini and Nepal, almost as if it's attempting to move away, up north, so that you don't have to deal with the turmoil that was happening at that point in time in Madras. It also looks at the somewhat closer relationship, that Telugu had with Sanskrit. So it's you can see, how he's paying attention to very, very important, but the things that people may not notice. That is, for instance, the language that is used in the Tamil version. The particular inflection of Sanskrit, the tone, which is somewhat different, from other Tamil films, the pronunciation and things like that. So he looks at Telugu's proximity to Sanskrit and the somewhat antagonistic relationship that Tamil had with Sanskrit, and he's trying to account for the difference in the languages in the two versions of the same film. The chapter also looks at the intertextuality between print and cinema, Chandamama and the film, the influence of stories of Aladdin, Vikram, and Betal, particularly, when it talks about Patala Bhairavi. It also looks at the resonances evoked by the name of the central character, Tota Raman, which kind of reminds one of people, in addition to Rama, the mythological figure Tenali Rama, and so on. It also looks at the superior technology that Vijayvahini Studios commanded at that point in time, particularly its ace technicians such as cinematographer Marcus Bartley, the chief lab processing technician N.C. Gupta, sound expert like A. Krishnan, and so on. It elaborates on the shooting of key scenes, songs, dialogues, and folkloric elements and fantasy. So it's a chapter that focuses on the film, but focuses on so many diverse aspects drawing from the film and also impinging upon the film. It ends with how the film is an instance of, he talks about Surabhi and how it could be seen as an instance of reverse transmission. So while we know of drama influencing cinema, he's also talking about cinema going back on stage, particularly on Surabhi stage and company drama after it became popular as film. The elaborate discussion, the second film that he discusses in this chapter is the film Misiyama in Tamil. And he looks at the studio's move from mythologicals to folklore films and to socials. He also looks at, or this chapter looks at the Bengali literary influence on Chakrapani, who was himself a translator who learned Bengali and translated from Bengali to Telugu. It elaborates on the differences, and this is a particularly fascinating part of the chapter. He looks at the site where the child, the girl child, gets lost in the film, which is a very important plot moment. So in the Telugu version, apparently the child gets lost in Pushkar Mela, and in the Tamil version, the child gets lost during the Mahamagam in Kumbakonam. He looks at, he's tracing various kinds of river disputes that existed, Kaveri between Tamil Nadu and Karnataka, and, with regard to Godavari river disputes. To kind of give us a sense of the significance of this shift that happens in the film between the Mahamagam and the Pushkar Mela. The chapter also delineates how the trope of the loss of the girl in the Mela stands in for the lost object that is Madras itself. Remember, this film comes in 1955 when it has been decided that Madras will very much be part of the Tamil territory when the linguistic reorganization happens. So it looks, the chapter also looks at the way in which the issue of unemployment and the protagonists who come from different religious backgrounds. The female protagonist is a Catholic, a devout Catholic, a Christian, while the male protagonist is a Hindu. And it looks at the dynamic between these two protagonists and also these two religions. It also touches upon the stars of the film and the print intertext. Remember, this was the time when Savitri and Ganesh, later whom we know as Gemini Ganeshan, were together. And later it is apparently announced, Savitri announces her name as Savitri Ganeshan, that they have married. So it also looks at how this film is set in, various kinds of such stories about star lives that were happening in the background. So I think with this, focus on one of the chapters, I think I will end my presentation on this book called Madras Studios. I hope you will be enthused to go and read the book. Not only Madras Studios, but also books related to cinema, and probably be enthused to research on cinema, something that is much needed at present. So I will now thank the organizers for asking me, once again to be a part of this, and hand over the mic to them. Thank you all very much.
Oh, thanks of you, madam, because this is the first time you are having a program on cinema content. Because though the book was so many years old, it still had the importance of the cine industry as such. Because the 300 pages book he has got many more takes to say, but precisely you made it within 1 hour to give some impression upon the SVA cine development, cine industry development to say. So for that, thank you on behalf of People's Higher Education for presenting a good information to our students. Thank you, madam.
Thank you very much. Yes, thank you.